Lately, I've been thinking about some of my favorite authors that I discovered last year. I've been wondering, are they a 5-star author or did they just write a 5-star book? But here's the thing, I've only read one book from each of these authors. So I'm putting it to the test by 1, narrowing down my favorite authors, 2, picking a book that I predict will be a 5-star read. The only catch is they have to be an author that I've only read one book from. Hello, what's good friends, family, and intimate reading associates? Very excited that you're here, very excited for today's video. Super excited to explore 5-star authors, but before we do that, I'd like to take some time to thank today's sponsor, Spines. Are you an author trying to get your first work published? Are you an author trying to get republished? Or are you a serial creative writer who wants to publish their work to the public? Well, Spines is the all-in-one tool for you. Spines is a one-stop shop that offers a seamless transition from draft to distribution. They handle all the complex background stuff while you get to focus on being creative. They offer comprehensive service including editing, proofreading, formatting, cover design, distribution, and marketing across a wide range of channels. By utilizing AI technology, they have streamlined every part of the publishing process. They have a global reach which allows you to rapidly transform manuscripts into published books, allowing you as the author to reach people globally. And if that wasn't enough, their experienced editorial support team gives you immediate access to professional editors with just a click of a button. But I'm not done. If you've still not been convinced, on the right-hand side is the industry standard, how long it takes between publishing, what the cost is, the royalties you'll receive, the kinds of formats you're allowed to do, the distribution, copyright, all of that stuff. And on the left-hand side, you have Spines. I'm not a professional, but that's a no-brainer to me. It's a win-win with Spines because you, as the author, are the priority. Spines is not only supportive, but it's incredibly user-friendly. So, head on over to spines.com today or click the link down below in the description to start your publication journey today for free. Thank you again so much to Spines for sponsoring this video. Back to the content. When thinking about authors to choose for this video, the first one that came to my mind was Blake Crouch. Blake Crouch is an American author best known for writing mystery thriller novels. His most famous book to date is Dark Matter, which just so happens to be the first book of his I ever read. Dark Matter is a sci-fi thriller that blew my mind. It was a book that I was not expecting at the time that I read it. It was an instant 5-star the moment I finished it. The first book of this video, and the book that I'm going to test whether or not Mr. Blake Crouch is indeed a 5-star author, is Recursion. What's going on, folks? The first book in today's video, Recursion. I'm not that far into it already, 47 pages in. For those of you unfamiliar with Blake Crouch and his writing, so far the books that I've read are these kind of science fiction based thrillers where he takes real life theories, real life scientific concepts, and he somehow creates a plot. For instance, in Dark Matter, without giving too much away, he kind of explores what it would be like to walk between dimensions, but not have it be so outlandishly science fiction that you're kind of going, this was goofy. This book is based on an even more wild concept. So we're following two main character POVs. One is Barry Sutton. He is a detective in New York City. Suddenly, people start catching this disease known as FMS, which is false memory syndrome. You could be walking along the street one day and all of a sudden you will have a flash of memory of a life that you never lived. You'll get an entire lifetime's worth of memories in an instant. It's driving people crazy. People cannot tell between their reality and this false reality that they keep seeing in their head. Barry starts investigating into how this even occurs, you know, how this even happens, but it leads him down a very dark rabbit hole where people on the other side don't want him to figure out truth behind all of this. And so he's playing a very dangerous game without knowing it. And then on the flip side, we have Helena, who is a neuroscientist. She is trying to get funding to build this chair, this machine that can help reunite people or merge people with their memories. She's doing this, of course, for scientific reasons, but she's doing this for personal reasons. Her mother is suffering from Alzheimer's, and so she's trying to see if there's not a way that she can help her mother remember and maybe stay off or postpone this very severe effects of Alzheimer's. So it's already a very interesting plot. I'm about to go on a very wild ride, so buckle up with me and let's get to it. I'm on book 3 on page 161. It has been slow reading the past few days. I think it's only been like 2 days. We had people in town and I was kind of reading this book in between what we were doing. Part 2 was phenomenal. Holy crap. There was so much revealed about what Helena's research looked like and who she was working for. Crazy, crazy plot twist. And then with what is his name? Barry. With Barry, he gets wrapped up in things. I did not expect this plot twist, but I really can't describe it without giving stuff away. Let's just say he gets a chance at something that people could only dream of. He's getting a shot at potentially altering the course of his life in a very dramatic way. The way part 2 ended was such a cliffhanger. My estimation of this book definitely increased. I am pretty much 50% of the way through, so the pace is quickening. Blake Crouch is doing his thing. So exciting. Okay, we need to talk about this freaking book. I am on book 5, on page 243. Wow. Absolutely thrilling. Really, if I tried to explain anything, it's a spoiler. So just bear with me, but I am so excited about this book. The thing about it is I think I'm more interested in the scientific aspect of this book than I was in Dark Matter. With Dark Matter, when he kind of explained things to you, this big light bulb went off on my head and I was like, yes, that makes total sense. I'm digging it, Blake. With Recursion, it took a bit longer for me to kind of wrap my brain around what he was trying to accomplish. And now I get it. I understand what he's going for. It's such a cool idea for a book. So I've got some time today. I'm gonna try to just crank this out. We're getting this done. Just stick around, okay? Don't go anywhere. What the heck was that ending? Wow. Wow. That was a very special ending. Recursion by Blake Crouch. The story was impressively plotted out. I cannot believe one mind came up with all of that on its own. Blake Crouch is a remarkable thriller author. Is it a 5-star? Yeah. You know what? Yeah, it's a 5-star. It's a 5-star read, and I'm not just basing that off of how I feel about this book. I'm not basing that off of an emotional response. As a thriller book, I think it checks all of my boxes. You know, he has it all in this book. I think he has it all more so in Recursion than he did in Dark Matter. Dark Matter was a flawless novel. Now, having read 2 novels from Mr. Crouch, does that make him a 5-star author? I want to say that it does. It's easy for me to distinguish whether somebody's going to be a 5-star author if at least 2 of their books are 5 stars. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what I should start with Blake Crouch next if you guys are Blake Crouch fans. I think it's time to get into the second author of this video. When thinking about authors for this video, I knew that I had to include Larry McMurtry. Larry McMurtry is an American author best known for writing works of historical fiction. His magnum opus is the staggering Lonesome Dove. Lonesome Dove changed my view on literature forever. One of the most beautiful books ever written. With how much that book impacted me, I knew that I had to continue with the sequel, Streets of Laredo. All right, Larry McMurtry. I've been dying to jump back into his works ever since I read Lonesome Dove. I could go on and on and on about what Lonesome Dove means to me. That book was pure gold. It was 6 stars before I ever finished it. Just an absolutely sprawling historical fiction Western masterpiece. If you haven't read that book, I think that's at least one book every reader needs to read. That's why I'm excited to get into Streets of Laredo. Streets of Laredo is technically the second book in the Lonesome Dove tetralogy. Depending on what reading order you want to read these 4 novels in, Streets of Laredo is either the second book that you read in the series or the last book that you read in the series. The thing about Larry McMurtry is he's a solid author. He's really good at giving you the history. He's really good at exploring the different cultural dynamics, not only the American frontier way of life, but you're also reading about Native American Indians and what life was like in Mexico, how all of these cultures and peoples kind of clashed. Yo, yo, yo. All right, it's been a few days. I'm all right. I guess I'm making some progress. I'm on page 111. I'm reading a lot slower. Each author has a different prose style, writing technique. It's always fascinating to me to switch up the genre and see, you know, the difference. Like, so with Recursion, you know, that book was written in at least the last 5-6 years. And so it has definitely a more modern style of prose, and Blake Crouch is a much more fast-paced. Whereas with Mr. McMurtry, even in a 30-year jump, writing has changed so much. Of course, not everybody wrote like Larry McMurtry in the 90s, but nobody really writes like Larry McMurtry today. I'm reading this one at a slower pace because Larry writes differently and he elaborates on things that Blake Crouch didn't, and he likes to explain and go into detail with certain things to help you understand where these people are, what it's like to be where these people are. Oftentimes what he'll do is he'll write the character in the present tense, and then he will backtrack you for a few pages on their past, or maybe a story in their past that seems disconnected, but it's actually not. It's his way of world building. It's how Larry McMurtry fleshes out the world of his stories. It's not necessarily annoying to me, but it does slow me down. Honestly, I think it's a genius way of writing. It's the next day. I stayed up so late reading this book. I cannot seem to put it down. I love the way he writes. It's not the most eloquent prose in the world, but it's not boxy and bland and straightforward. It's somewhere in between. It has a rhythm to it. There's a beauty to it, and there's also a harshness to it. And I think his prose does a fantastic job of reflecting the story, because it is a beautiful story, but it's also a very brutal and violent story. It's a story about men of violence pursuing justice and other men of violence pursuing evil. Have I even talked about the story yet? In a nutshell, Captain Call has been hired by this colonel in Washington, D.C. to hunt down and subdue train robber known as Joey Garza. Part 2 kind of deviates from the main story. As entertaining as it is, I just felt like part 2 kind of deviated from the whole idea of what this book started off as. Don't get me wrong, I'm all down for some nice gunfights and villains getting served some cold, hard justice, but was it necessary? I'm on page 373 of 538, so we've got a ways to go. Stretch of Laredo by Larry McMurtry. Oh man, what can I say? Historically, I don't know, it feels like you're there in the American frontier in the late 1800s, or heck, even before. I don't even really know when this is supposed to be dated. Prose is excellent. Larry McMurtry, just very unique. Of all the authors that I've read, he stands out among most of them as having some of the most unique prose I've ever read. It hooks me, it keeps me engaged. I don't know, I love it. I love it. When it comes to the story, it feels all over the place. I'm not gonna lie, because you're not just focusing on Call and having things done from his perspective. Almost every single main character that's mentioned or that's named has a POV. PI has a POV, the derpy sheriff has a POV, the accountant from New York has a POV, Joey Garza that they're after has a POV, his mom has a POV, the men that are in love with his mom have a POV, PI's wife has a POV. Everybody that's involved in this story in some way, whether it's small or large, they have a POV. And so the story often bounces all over the place. And that's what Lonesome Dove did. I went into this story anticipating that would be the case. And I'm not mad about that at all. The plot was good, but I wanted a certain sense of justice that I never got. Still very good book, very beautiful. Does not hold the same weight to me that Lonesome Dove did. I would probably give this a solid, I'd probably give it a solid 4 out of 5. Maybe even a little bit lower, maybe like a 3.75. That does not discount Mr. McMurtry from being a 5-star author, because I still have 2 other books in this tetralogy to finish, and of course I'm going to branch off into his other works. So I'm not going to discount him yet, but so far for this experiment, he fails the test. Let's move on to our final author. The final author that I've chosen for this video is Pat Conroy. Pat Conroy is an American author known for writing beautiful literary fiction. His magnum opus, The Prince of Tides, changed my life forever. The Prince of Tides changed my outlook on literary fiction for the rest of my life. This video really wouldn't be complete without a Pat Conroy novel. The last and final book that I've chosen for this video is South of Broad. All right, the third and final author of today's video is Pat Conroy. Pat Pat Conroy is an author that I have been gushing about ever since last fall when I read his masterpiece, The Prince of Tides. Prince of Tides was beyond 6 stars. Pat Conroy writes beautiful literary fiction set usually in South Carolina, where he's from, in Charleston or thereabouts. I thought Pat Conroy would be an excellent author to explore in this video. So I'm going to be reading South of Broad. Let's begin. Look who it is, everybody. Say hi. So, South of Broad. I started it yesterday. Yeah. I'm flying through this book. That's a really good sign, right? From the onset, I would say the thing that captures me immediately with Pat Conroy is his prose. I've never read writing quite like him before. And I want to give you a few examples to give you a taste of what I'm talking about. Here's the second paragraph of this freaking book. I carry the delicate porcelain beauty of Charleston like the hinged shell of some soft-tissued mollusk. My soul is peninsula-shaped and sun-hardened and river-swollen. The high tides of the city flood my consciousness each day, subject to the whims and harmonies of full moons rising out of the Atlantic. I grow calm when I see the ranks of palmetto trees pulling guard duty on the banks of Colonial Lake, or hear the bells of St. Michael's calling cadence in the cicada-filled trees along Meeting Street. Deep in my bones, I knew early that I was one of those incorrigible creatures known as Charlestonians. The way that Pat Conroy just romanticizes this city makes me want to move to Charleston. Like, I've written some of these down just because I wanted to remember them forever. Yes, I know I could have just marked them down in the book, but there's something about me that doesn't like to annotate. Time moves funny, and it's hard to pin down. Occasionally, time offers you 100 opportunities to do the right thing. Sometimes, it gives you only one chance. Amen and amen. I was trying to unravel the complicated trigonometry of the radical thought that silence could make up the greatest lie ever told. Being a failed teenager is not a crime, but a predicament and a secret crucible. It is a funhouse mirror where distortion and mystification led to the bitter reflection that sometimes ripens into self-knowledge. Time is the only ally of the humiliated teenager, who eventually discovers the golden boy of the senior class is a bloated, bald drunk at the 20th reunion, and that the homecoming queen married a wife-beater and philanderer and died in a drug rehabilitation center before she was 30. The Prince of Acne rallied in college and is now head of neurology, and the homeliest girl blossoms in her 20s, marries the chief financial officer of a national bank, and attends her reunion as president of the junior league. But since a teenager is denied a crystal ball that will predict the future, there is a forced march quality to this unspeakable rite of passage. It is an unforgivable crime for teenagers not to be able to absolve themselves for being ridiculous creatures at the most hazardous time of their lives. Just Pat Conroy has a way with his words. His stories definitely revolve around difficult subject matter. And with South of Broad, we're following a group of outcast misfits. The head of the pack being Leo King, our narrative voice for the story, and he makes friends with a rough assortment of characters, and they make one of the most remarkable group of friends I think I've ever read in literature. But the part where I'm at now is 20 years later, they find themselves having to band together to save the life of one of their dear friends, who they found out has AIDS, and he's missing. So they want to try and find him, to bring him home to North Carolina so that he can die in peace and surrounded by people that he loves. Already it's pulling on my heartstrings. Now, I'm not going to say it's a 5-star yet. I'm not going to say Pat Conroy is a 5-star author just yet, but I think we all know the trajectory. When I'm gushing about a book like this already, and I'm only halfway through it, the pattern on this channel tends to be that I'm going to, in the next few clips or so, tell you exactly why this is a 5-star book. But in the meantime, roll some montage. Getting very close. This has just been 2 days of reading, guys, flying through this book. There's been so many moments where I've been on the brink of tears with how touching and heartfelt this book can get. And that's the same thing in Prince of Tides. Prince of Tides, I bawled my eyes out at one particular moment, but I found myself welling with emotion at several others. He's the master at making you feel something. Apart from every other author I've ever read, I think Pat Conroy is starting to hold a very special place in my heart for just how he writes his stories, how he creates these epic dramas of family and relationship, tragedy and happiness, heartbreak and abuse. There's so many things that are wrapped up in his novels. I just didn't know he would do this to me again. It took a twist that I did not expect. I did not expect there to be stakes like this in this book, but there are. I finished. It took me no time at all to read this book. outstanding. Absolutely. This book is a 5-star book. Utterly compelled. This book was beautiful in all the right ways. His literary fiction strikes a chord with me. I now definitely urge everybody to read this book. If you are a fan of literary fiction in any way, shape, or form, I think Pat Conroy is an author that you definitely need to check out. Let's recap. I experimented with 3 authors and walked away with 2 5-star reads. What does that tell us? What does it mean to be a 5-star author? I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all objective way to measure whether an author is 5-star. I think it's a completely subjective thing. One book that I give 5 stars, someone else may give 2 or 3. It all is a matter of taste at the end of the day. The first book I read, Blake Crouch, science-based mystery thriller books with a crazy sense of urgency to them. The 2 books of his that I've read so far, they're like puzzles, and when everything fits perfectly and aligns near the end, I step back after reading these novels and go, holy crap, this guy is a genius. This guy is so brilliant. He's a 5-star author because when it comes to thrillers, I don't want just the same cookie cutter, there's a serial killer on the loose, or there's a murderer in their house, or the phone calls coming from inside the house. He takes a different approach to it, and he layers the story with so much scientific, and I love the rush that they give me. He's a 5-star author because he just checks all of those boxes. Larry McMurtry, unfortunately, based on the parameters of this experiment and this video idea, he's not yet a 5-star author. He definitely has potential. I could reread this in a few years and go, maybe I was a little too critical. It takes some time for book taste to evolve, that once I reread a book, or when I take some time to really think about a book, I change my mind and opinion. And that could be the case with Streets of Laredo. I'm not giving up on Larry because I love his writing and I love his stories. When it comes to historical fiction, I find that he's one of my favorites. He touches on a time period that I'm very fascinated in. American West, Wild Frontier. I'm excited to dip my toes back into Dead Man's Walk, finish off with Comanche Moon, and then we'll see how I really feel about this series and him as a writer. And then of course, Pat Conroy is definitely a 5-star author. Why is Pat Conroy a 5-star author for me? 1, his prose. It's the most beautiful writing I think I've ever read. And then of course, as a character first reader, I am 100% invested in the characters before I'm invested in anything else, and he is a character first writer. I don't even care if anything is really happening in the story. I love the way he writes people. Let me know down in the comments your 5-star authors. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think, if you've read some of these books, what you think about these authors, but of course I want to know authors that you keep coming back to time and time again. Folks, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you again to Spines for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in writing stories and getting them published, but don't quite know where to start, head on over to spines.com or click the link in the description to start today for free. Folks, I'll catch you in the next one.